3 weeks after my so-called husband ran off with the office temptress, I walked into the same luxury store where he used to borrow my credit card. The sales clerk looked at me like she'd seen a ghost. I smiled, leaned on the glass counter, and said, "Don't worry, I'm not here for refunds. I'm here to pick out a necklace, one that only real money can buy." Out of the corner of my eye, I caught Chloe staring from the perfume aisle, clutching Mark's arm like she'd just won the lottery. She had no idea. Neither of them did. Because the thing about gold diggers and freeloaders, they never realize who the real millionaire is until it's too late. New York, Thursday evening. The kind of sticky spring heat that makes expensive makeup melt and tempers fray faster than silk threads. I was running late from a client meeting, still in a suit heels, clicking on marble as I hurried into the Pavilion, a high-end mall where Mark and I used to window shop on weekends when he felt like playing rich husband. Tonight, I was only here because Chloe Lynn had messaged our group chat celebrating Mark's new project Drinks on Us at Cartier 630 Drinks in a jewelry store. Only in Manhattan, right? I should have known what I was walking into. But I still went out of politeness, out of stupidity. Maybe out of the last bit of hope that my marriage could survive the slow, humiliating slide into tabloid cliché. Chloe was already holding court when I arrived. She wore white, always white, like innocence was something you could wear as armor. Mark hovered by her elbow, laughing too loud at her jokes, barely glancing in my direction. The sales staff brought champagne, pouring it for everyone except me. I stood by the display trying to breathe through the shame tightening in my chest. "Vivian, didn't you say you can't afford the new collection?" Chloe's voice rang out high and sweet. Mark snickered. The others followed suit. "She's just practical," Mark said. "Always saving, never splurging. That's what I love about her." My hands curled around my clutch. I bit down every response that wanted to crawl up my throat. Chloe smiled, sipping champagne. "You know, some women don't have to save. Some of us just have the right kind of luck." She turned her gaze on me, all syrup and poison. "Isn't that right, Vivian?" I smiled small and sharp. "Luck runs out. But class, well, that never goes out of style." Chloe's eyes flashed. For a second, her smile slipped. Mark just rolled his eyes, already looking past me, his hand on her lower back like a public claim. That was the night I decided. If humiliation was a game, I'd stop playing defense. Let them think they'd won. I was just getting started. The next morning, Mark was already up, sipping coffee in his robe, reading the news on his phone, as if he hadn't left me to drown in champagne and side-eyes the night before. He looked up, fake casual. "You coming to the office? Chloe's pitching the new client. She asked for you." I poured myself coffee, watched the way his hand shook when he set his mug down. "She's ambitious," I said, letting my voice stay flat. "Maybe she'll land a real job one day." He ignored that. "She's got hustle. Not everyone's born lucky, Viv." I almost laughed. Not everyone's born lucky, says the man living in an apartment my parents helped buy, driving a car I leased, spending money I earned. He tossed his empty mug in the sink, not bothering to rinse. "I'll see you there," he called over his shoulder. No kiss, not even a look back. At the office, Chloe greeted me like a best friend on Instagram Live, loud, breathless arm looped through mine before I could escape. "Vivian, we missed you at drinks last night. Mark said you were tired, just busy," I replied, pulling away. She flashed her perfect teeth. "You know Mark's so much happier these days. He said you're letting him focus on his dreams. That's so generous." She said generous like it was a dirty word. Tell me, Viv, how do you do it? Most women would be jealous. I met her eyes steady as glass. Most women would know better than to mistake someone else's hard work for their own. She blinked. For a second, I saw the mask slip. But then she giggled, running back to Mark, who was already basking in her glow. I spent the day working twice as hard as anyone just to be half as respected. Mark spent it in meetings, most of them at brunch or the gym or pacing the hallway with Chloe. He texted me once, "Pick up dry cleaning," I replied. "Pick up your ambition first." No answer. That night, I lay in bed and stared at the ceiling, listening to him snore beside me. "You're not my partner, Mark. You're just my shadow living off the light you think you deserve." For the first time, I let myself admit it. If I disappeared tomorrow, nothing in his life would change except the bank balance. And that's when I knew I wasn't the one who needed to be afraid of being alone. The next weekend, I flew home to visit my parents, just a quick trip for Mom's birthday, I told Mark. He barely looked up from his Xbox controller. "Tell her I said hi," he mumbled. "And maybe remind her we're still waiting on that business loan." I didn't answer. Didn't tell him she'd already cut that check 6 months ago into my name, not his. Didn't tell him that the business he called his was actually running on Harper blood and Harper money. My parents lived in Westchester in a gated estate where the hedges were always perfect and the silence was expensive. My father met me at the front door with a glass of Cabernet and a raised brow. "How's the freeloading artist you married?" I took the wine, smiled grimly. "Still painting masterpieces with my Amex." My mother appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a linen towel. "Vivian, why haven't you handed him his walking papers?" I gave the same answer I always did. "Because I want him to think he's winning. People like Mark make mistakes when they think they've already won." They exchanged a glance. My father chuckled. "My daughter, the silent strategist. You're your grandfather's blood, no question." That night, over roasted duck and the best Chardonnay money could ship from France, I told them everything. About Chloe, about the champagne, about the way Mark wore his audacity like a tailored suit and treated my success like a footstool. My mother didn't blink. "You always said you'd build something that couldn't be taken away. I hope you protected it properly." I nodded. "Prenup. My name on every deed. I'm not stupid." My father raised his glass. "Then don't act like you are. We didn't raise a woman to beg for loyalty." On the train ride back to Manhattan, I reviewed the files my family's legal team had prepared years ago just in case. Separate assets, controlled trusts, a silent ownership stake in Mark's company that he didn't even know existed. "You thought I was just the woman behind the man Mark, but you've always been the brand. And I own the copyright." Our anniversary fell on a Wednesday that year. I reminded Mark 3 times in the weeks leading up, not because I expected flowers or a grand gesture, but because I was curious. Curious what kind of lie he'd choose. Curious how far gone he really was. The morning came, and with it, silence. No note, no breakfast, no text. He left for work early, kissed the top of my head like I was his assistant and not his wife. By noon, I knew. I didn't need a private investigator. I had Chloe's Instagram. She posted a casual brunch photo at a hotel downtown, the same one where Mark had once taken me on our first weekend getaway. Same restaurant, same table by the window, same damn white wine. The caption read, "When someone remembers the little things." Lucky girl, I didn't call, didn't rage. I just sent the post to a burner cloud folder I'd titled Receipts. That evening, I cooked dinner like I always did. Seared salmon, herbed rice, a green salad with the vinaigrette he liked. At 9:43 p.m., Mark walked in hair-tousled shirt, wrinkled, smelling faintly of her perfume. "Sorry, babe. Work ran late. You know how it is." I looked at the untouched food on the table, then at him, then said calmly, "She wore the same dress I wore, you know. The cream silk one you said made me look too expensive." He blinked, stammered, "I don't know what you're talking about. You don't have to lie," I cut in. "It's insulting." He crossed his arms, defensive now. "You're always making things a big deal. It was just lunch. She's part of the team. So was I." That shut him up. He slept on the couch that night, not because I told him to, but because the silence between us had finally become a wall. While he snored beneath the glow of the muted TV, I lay awake in bed and rewrote my life in my head. Not as someone's wife, but as the woman they never saw coming. I don't remember what excuse Mark gave the next day. Something about Chloe needing help moving apartments. Something about a client dinner that went long. Something about how I was being too emotional lately. I just nodded, handed him his gym bag, and said, "Text me next time you decide to skip our anniversary." He laughed, kissed my forehead like I was a child, and said, "Don't be dramatic, Viv." That weekend, he and Chloe disappeared for a work retreat. It wasn't even subtle anymore. And I didn't ask questions. I just made calls. First to Mr. Wright, my family's general counsel. Then to a private investigator named Darnell, recommended by Tara from my old college sorority. "You'll want hard evidence," she said. "Video GPS spending logs. It needs to look clean and calculated like he never had a chance." I sent him Chloe's license plate and Mark's preferred hotel chain. By Monday, I had more than I needed. Room service bills, security footage timestamps. One particularly grainy video of Mark holding Chloe's heel as she staggered out of an Uber, giggling, his hand far too familiar on her waist. I sat on the couch with the evidence spread out on my laptop. Mark was upstairs, probably texting her good night while claiming he was catching up on emails. I stared at the screen silent. No crying, no panic, just a shift. Like something inside me had finally snapped into place. He thinks I'm the fool. He thinks I'm too proud to leave, too quiet to fight back, too polite to win. Good. Let him think that. The next morning, I asked Mark if he wanted me to pick up lunch for him and Chloe. He blinked. "Seriously?" I smiled. "She's family, right?" He laughed, confused, but pleased. "Yeah, sure, that's thoughtful." I picked up sushi, had the restaurant pack it in a discreet black bag. Then I slipped a tiny AirTag in the bottom lining, just to keep track, just to know where they like to play. Mark never noticed. By the end of the week, I knew their rhythm. Lunch at her place, Mondays and Wednesdays. Dinner in Soho on Thursdays. Hotel every other Friday. You had a pattern, Mark, and I had the time, and the patience, and the receipts. 2 weeks later, I walked into the same luxury store where Chloe had once laughed at my budget tastes. Only this time, I wasn't wearing office flats or pretending to blend in. I wore stilettos, a fitted navy dress, my mother's diamonds, and confidence like armor. Ms. May, the store manager, recognized me instantly. She stepped forward with a warm but cautious smile. "Mrs. Foster, it's good to see you again." "Let's drop the Mrs.," I said. "I'm here under my own name today, Vivian Harper." Her posture changed immediately. The name Harper carried weight in this city. Money, power, legacy. "Of course, Miss Harper." "May I help you find something?" I nodded. "Actually, I'm picking up a custom piece." I handed her the receipt, one I'd ordered weeks ago. The same day, Chloe posted a Cartier bracelet with a caption, "When the right man knows your worth." My order was a necklace, 18K gold, custom engraved. On the underside, "Borrowed love is never owned." Miss May retrieved the box. I opened it, smiled at the glint of gold, then turned. Chloe was by the perfume counter again, holding a tester bottle and pretending not to notice me. She couldn't help it. She came over all sugar and venom. "Vivian. Again, don't tell me Mark's finally letting you spend real money." I turned the box toward her, slow and steady. "Actually, this one's on me. My name's on the Harper & Harper account. Didn't you know?" Her smile faltered. I thought Mark was the client." I tilted my head. "He plays CEO very well. But the money, that's family money. Mine." I snapped the box closed. "Oh, and this," I added, holding up the necklace. "It's for the woman who doesn't sleep her way into someone else's bank account." She went pale. "You're bluffing." I leaned in. "Then sue me, sweetheart. I'll send my actual lawyer this time." I left her standing there, stunned and silent, fingers still curled around a bottle of designer fragrance she could no longer afford. And as I walked out into the street, sunlight bouncing off the storefront behind me, I whispered to myself, "One down." The following Monday, I walked into Mark's office wearing black. Not for mourning, for war. He was seated at his desk, flipping through client proposals with a red pen he never actually used. Chloe was nowhere in sight. She hadn't been around much lately. Word travels fast when luxury store managers talk. I set a folder on his desk. Leather-bound, heavy, final. He looked up, confused. "What's this?" "It's what you've been working toward this whole marriage," I said. "Divorce papers." He laughed nervously. "Viv, come on, you're being ridiculous." I didn't blink. "Mr. Wright will walk you through everything. My share of the business, my original investment, the prenup you forgot I wrote." He swallowed, hard. You said you'd never use that. You said you'd never cheat. We all lie." He reached for the folder, but I kept my hand on it a second longer. "By the way," I added, "the board meeting is in 30 minutes. You'll want to show up. Dress nice." He paled. "What board meeting?" "The one where I tell your investors you've been using company funds to impress your mistress while faking revenue projections." His mouth opened, but no sound came out. "I have receipts." I smiled, literal ones. At 10 a.m. sharp, I walked into the conference room, flanked by 2 lawyers and Miss May. Yes, that Ms. May from the luxury store. She was only too happy to confirm Mark's recent habits. The investors were quiet at first, then furious, then decisive. By noon, Mark had been stripped of his executive privileges. He walked out holding a cardboard box full of personal items and a confused expression that made him look 10 years older. Chloe never showed. She had unfollowed him on every platform that morning. That night, I stood on the balcony of my apartment now since the mortgage had always been under my name, and watched the city burn golden under the setting sun. Not with revenge, with rebirth. He thought he could spend me. She thought she could replace me. They both forgot I wasn't a price tag. I was the one who signed the checks. After the board meeting, Mark tried to stay relevant. He called mutual contacts, reached out to old clients, tried to rebrand himself as the visionary behind Harper Creative Studio. But the city talks, and so do attorneys. 3 days later, he received a cease and desist from my lawyers, forbidding him from using the company name in any future ventures. His bank accounts frozen pending investigation into misappropriated funds. The lease on his rented Soho condo defaulted. By the end of the month, he was couch surfing. And Chloe. She didn't stick around. Tara texted me a screenshot from Chloe's Instagram. She was in Miami posting recovery vibes from a rooftop bar tagging a crypto influencer twice her age. Caption, "Sometimes you have to lose the wrong man to find the right money." I didn't even react. She was never my problem. Mark had been the one foolish enough to believe she loved him for his soul and not the stolen Amex. Meanwhile, I hosted my first solo investors roundtable as Vivian Harper, not Mrs. Foster. They asked sharper questions than usual, but when I showed them the numbers and my vision, the room quieted. Then they clapped, not for my marriage, not for my restraint, but for my precision. Ms. May sent me flowers. The card read, "For the woman who played the long game and won." I placed them on my desk next to the necklace Chloe had once called subtle. It glittered in the morning light like a trophy. By the time Mark emailed me some pitiful apology wrapped in nostalgia and financial desperation, I didn't even open the attachment. I just forwarded it to Mr. Right, subject line, block. Let them fall. Let them hit the bottom they thought I'd never walk away from. Because while they were busy chasing status, I'd already built an empire. And now I was finally ready to live in it alone, unapologetically, and absolutely untouchable. By early fall, the dust had settled. Mark's name disappeared from headlines, investor decks, and public events. He stopped trying to claw his way back into relevance. Even his LinkedIn changed from founder and CEO to consultant, a nice corporate way to say unemployed. Chloe was quieter too. No more rooftop cocktails, no designer halls, just filtered photos of sunsets, cryptic captions about letting go, and the occasional quote stolen from Pinterest. The girl who once paraded herself through my marriage now posted about healing and alignment. Healing from what, sweetheart, a broken manicure or a broken credit score? One night I got a DM from an unknown account. The message was short. "I didn't know he was using your money. It wasn't signed, but I knew it was Chloe." I didn't reply. Not because I was angry, because I was done. She wanted closure. She wanted grace. She wanted me to be the bigger person. But I had learned something crucial. Closure isn't a conversation. It's a choice. And I'd already closed that door. Quietly. With the lock changed. Tara and I celebrated with drinks at the rooftop bar Chloe once loved. We wore white. She raised her glass. To silent exits and loud success. I raised mine, to never explaining what they already know. Later that week, I got invited to speak on a panel, Women Who Built It Themselves. I hesitated. I wasn't one for the spotlight. But then I remembered all those years I let Mark take credit. All the times I made myself small so he could feel important. And I said yes. That night, I stood under stage lights, mic in hand room, full of women staring back at me, waiting. I didn't tell them about Chloe. I didn't even say Mark's name. I just said, don't wait for the world to recognize your worth. Build something so undeniable they have to watch in silence. And they applauded. Not because I'd survived the scandal, but because I'd never needed them to see me. I had already seen myself. Exactly 1 year after I filed for divorce, I stood in my own office penthouse floor, glass walls, sunlight spilling over marble, and took my coffee black. No sugar, no cream, just strength, like me. The company, my company, was thriving. I'd rebranded the studio under my own name, Harper Atelier. New vision, new leadership, same brilliance, finally credited to the right person. I brought in new talent, promoted women who had once been overlooked. People whispered I'd become cutthroat. Let them whisper. Because the truth was, I wasn't cruel. I was just no longer interested in making myself digestible for people who could never afford my value. Mark sent one last email that fall. The subject line: "Do you ever think about us? I did. Sometimes." In the way you remember a stain on your favorite dress, the one you learned to stop blaming yourself for wearing. I never responded. Chloe, last I heard, she'd moved to the suburbs, selling essential oils online. Still blonde, still bitter. I never checked. Not out of malice, just indifference. I hosted a dinner that December, just 12 guests. People who mattered. People who'd never asked me to shrink. Tara gave a toast to Vivian, who walked away quietly and let the world figure out what they lost. They laughed. I smiled, but inside I wasn't celebrating a comeback. I was just living what was always mine: peace, power, and the kind of silence that feels like freedom. After everyone left, I stood on my balcony, barefoot, wind teasing the hem of my silk robe. Below me, the city pulsed, not louder than me, just finally beneath me. I sipped the last of my wine and whispered not to anyone in particular I didn't win. I just stopped losing, and in that moment I was whole.